Joining us for more analysis is Mick Mulroy, former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East under President Donald Trump. Mick, thank you for joining us today.
Great to be with you, Catalina.
From your own experience at the Pentagon, Mick, what message is Washington sending to Tehran right now?
So this is certainly a considerable amount of U.S. military force projection. We have the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, which is one of the most sophisticated naval weapon systems, quite frankly, ever. It's now in the Middle East, and it is in position to take strikes. There's also the USS George Bush in the Mediterranean that can also reach Iran and defend Israel if needed. And I think the message that you're sending is either come to the table and negotiate a new nuclear agreement, which would also include, from President Trump's perspective, the ballistic missile program and their support to proxy forces like Hezbollah and Hamas, or the United States is prepared to take significant military action. And they certainly have the capability to do so now.
And does deploying an aircraft carrier strike group significantly change the military balance here, or is this more about deterrence more than imminent action? What do you think?
I think it's more about imminent action. I mean, I don't think there was any real chance that Iran would take some kind of preemptive strike. They have a lot going on, of course, with these massive protests. President Trump has actually said that he would strike regime targets because of the protests, certainly if they kept killing innocent civilians. So it might be for two reasons. One, there is some reports that the Iranians are looking to restart their nuclear weapons program. And as I just mentioned, there is these massive protests. And I think they might take the opportunity, if they do, I don't know that the decision has been made, but to do two types of strikes, one against the nuclear facilities, the other against regime security targets like the IRGC, the siege force.
And from your own experience, from your knowledge, how quickly could the U.S. forces move from positioning from where they are or from where they're getting to launching a strike if President Trump actually gave the order?
Not much time at all. I think if you're looking for any kind of heads up, it would be U.S. military personnel evacuating from certain key bases in the Middle East, specifically Al Udeid in Qatar. That's exactly what happened last time. They take all the non-essential troops out of there and just leave the necessary because Iran is likely to strike at that facility. They did last time. And of course, we shot down all the missiles. But that is, I think, would be the only indication that a strike is imminent. If they don't do that, it could be very quick. It's just a matter of the president giving the execution order. I am sure they have the entire plan already prepared. And at least rehearsed as far as doing it what we call a rock drill. So already having planned it all the way out, just not actually executing.
And so Iran is bracing now for what is a possible U.S.-Israeli attack here. So how coordinated would such an operation need to be effective? And how would this operation be different than the 12-day war that we saw last year?
So, Catalina, there is also reports that there's French and British air components that have surged forward. And of course, Israel might participate. So it needs to be heavily coordinated. That's why I think we saw the commander of Central Command, Admiral Cooper, in Tel Aviv earlier, just a few days ago. So it'll be heavily coordinated. I do think the difference will be it won't be just against the nuclear facilities. Like Fort Al, like it was last time. Predominantly, the U.S. just targeted that because of the munitions that we have available to us. It may also include regime targets, such as the Supreme Leader and the senior security cabinet officials, as well as the IRGC leadership, which is one of the concerns that if there is a toppling of the regime, the IRGC would simply take over. So they might try to mitigate that as a potential by targeting them if they take these strikes. So it wouldn't be just nuclear, it'd also be regime and security targets.
And you've dealt with the Middle East strategy firsthand here, Mike. So how risky is escalation in the region, having already stretched by multiple conflicts?
So, of course, the Iranians will feel like they have to strike back. They have rebuilt some of their ballistic missile capability. I don't think it'll be much more on that front than it was last time. But one of the most concerning actions the Iranians could take is the sea mining of the Straits of Hormuz. About 40% of the world's energy supply comes from this region, and that could essentially cripple it, at least as far as moving it by sea, which is how all this energy is usually transported. That wouldn't affect the United States so much. We don't get much of our energy from there, but certainly around the world, in Indo-Pacific especially, that could have a very crippling effect on economies. So it is something they could do, but they would be doing it essentially to the entire world, and it would actually hurt them as well because they bring their oil out through the same maritime passageway.
And you were mentioning cooperation here. You mentioned France as well as the UK. Here there's other reports because Iran claims it's more prepared than ever to respond to a US attack. Could this involve a closer cooperation with China or Russia here?
I don't know that they would. I certainly wouldn't be involved. I don't know if there would be any kind of dialogue between the United States and Russia or China prior to. I think it would be probably immediately after, and not, to make excuses or try to get them on board. That's never going to happen. But certainly to quell any potential for this to escalate. Basically, use them to negotiate with Iran, like they did last time, where Iran felt like they had to respond. It was mostly symbolic. It didn't injure or really do any damage, but they could say and tell their people they essentially did all these things and caused all this damage when in fact they didn't. But I think that kind of negotiation, or at least dialogue, will happen. But I don't think there'll be any kind of pre-warning to any country except for the countries involved. And then immediately thereafter, all of the partners in the regions, I believe the United States will be reaching out to talk to them. And of course, they'll be ready to defend them. And as last time, when Iran did send multiple missiles and drones at Israel, a lot of the partners in the region participated in shooting them down. So it wasn't just the U.S. and Israel and the U.K. and France. It was also Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and other countries in the region as those munitions flew over their territory.
And could this deployment still lead to diplomacy, or once an aircraft carrier arrives to the Middle East, does momentum shift here towards conflict?
So it could certainly lead to diplomacy. It is, I think, one of the tactics they're using: project the force, get them to be very concerned about what could happen, get them to the negotiation table. But if they don't come to the negotiation table, I don't think that the Pentagon, that the president, the White House would have decided to do this and then balk. So I think there's a very good chance that this happens. It really comes down to the willingness of the Iranians, not only to negotiate, but to negotiate on terms that the United States is presenting now. And that is, I think, broader than just them not attaining a nuclear weapon, and includes those other factors, the ballistic missile program, and their support to all these terrorist groups that destabilize the entire Middle East region.
And bottom line here, Mick, in your view, is the U.S. preparing for war or trying to prevent one through overwhelming force? What do you think?
I think the U.S. is trying to prevent the need for, well, I wouldn't say war. I mean, it's certainly, one could say it's an act of war, obviously, to attack a country, but I would say it's limited war, right? So Iran's talking total war. Total war obviously involves ground troops, occupation. That's not happening. I think this is going to be a very limited, very targeted event if it occurs at all. And again, that really comes down to whether Iran takes the diplomatic off-ramp, or they insist on this going forward. And then, of course, the decision's up to the president, the commander-in-chief. But it does look like it would go toward some kind of kinetic action of limited duration, but could be significant. It really depends also of how Iran responds.
That was Mick Mulroy for us. Thank you for joining us and for your perspective. Former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East under President Donald Trump.